G'day guys, today we've got this little Melaleuca claret tops that I picked up from the local Bunnings. It was marked down, $5. Brought it home, repotted it, we've let it rebuild its strength again, and today we're going to pick out a pot for it, pot it up and do some styling on it. Righto, so we've got our little Melaleuca. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to style it, because the style that we end up going for will influence the choice of what pot we put it in. Some styles look good in some pots, some need round pots, some need square. So we'll do the styling first, and the tools I've got for that, I've got a heap of wire, just aluminium wire. You can find that just about anywhere. Bunnings stocks a lot of it, any of your online bonsai stores. I've got right up to pretty thick stuff in case we need to try and bend some thick branches. It's got some little scissors for pruning smaller stuff, some branch cutters for cutting any of the branches. These get nice clean cuts when you go to cut branches off. I've just got a cheapy set of branch cutters as well that I use for any of the root work. I don't mind so much if these get damaged by bits of rock in the dirt and things like that. We will tease out some of the dirt from around the base of the tree and just see what's under the ground there. And for doing that I just use a bamboo chopstick. That's about all we really need. So like I said, the first thing we'll do is we'll pop it out of its pot and we'll just have a little bit of a dig around the soil surface. We won't disturb it too much, and yeah, we'll just see what we find and then we'll work on a style. I'm pretty set on trying to do a windswept style with this tree, but we'll just see what we end up with. I've never done a windswept style of tree before, so yeah, this will be a learning experience for me as well. And this tree's only been in this pot probably for 2 months. It was in a smaller size pot when we got it from Bunnings, and yes, it's filling the pot out really well, so it's good to see that it's growing healthy. And really that's the number one thing that you need to look at before you go styling your bonsais or repotting them. Just make sure the tree's healthy. If the tree's not healthy, you've got a much greater chance of it not coming back from anything that you do. And these Australian natives probably applies more to them than anything else. If they're growing strong, you can do so much with them. If they're not, you're likely to just kill them. But yeah, tree health is number one. And what we're looking for when we sort of dig through these surface roots here, just looking to see, maybe there might be a bit of flare in the trunk that we can sort of bring that tree up and drop the soil level a little bit and just get that flared trunk that might help with the illusion of age, which is what we always like to go for. But until you get in here, you don't really know what you've got. And what this trunk looks like will influence what the front of the tree is. We always want one side of the tree to be our front, which is the side that we'll mainly view the tree from. So we sort of need to see everything that we're working with, or everything that'll be visible, before we decide on the front. And then the rest of the styling goes from there. Okay, so we've got the main trunk continues down over to that side, and we've got a few strong roots out here. Nice strong root down here. We could maybe make our base down here, remove this root up high, and then we look like we've got a bit of a flare in our root base, and that'll continue to develop in the pot. That's probably not a bad way to go, actually, if the rest of the tree will support that. So you can look at that and you can say that's the ideal root base, but then you've got this huge big branch that's sticking out straight towards you, so that's not really ideal. So a bit of a dig over this side, and you've sort of got to weigh the whole tree up and decide what direction we're going in. So from this side we should be able to end up with a similar sort of a root flare. Maybe not quite the same, but and we have a lot smaller branch that we can do something with. We might be able to, you know, being a windswept, we can, you know, maybe bend it down and, you know, make it look like it's been blown by the wind. And I think we might get rid of that upper root to start with. And so if we make the soil level down here, hopefully you can see that. We have a nice bit of taper in the trunk, some root flare out this way that'll continue to develop, root flare out that way, and that'll continue to develop as the tree ages. If we were, and this is only going to be a small tree. If we wanted this to be a larger tree, say we wanted it to be about 2 feet tall, we'd let this grow a lot more. We'd thicken that trunk up a lot more. But being a small tree, and that's how we're going to keep it, you know, we've probably got enough width in the trunk. Because once you put it into a bonsai pot, you've got to realise that you're constricting the amount of room that the tree has to grow in. And generally the potting mix that you use in a bonsai pot is very free draining. There's not a lot of organic matter in there. There's not a lot of food for the tree. It promotes fine growth on the trees, but it doesn't really promote that rapid growth that'll give you thick trunks. Like a trunk will continue to thicken on the plant while it's in a bonsai pot, but not to the degree as it would if it was in the ground or if it was in a big black plastic pot or anything like that. So in terms of the thickness of the trunk, we're sort of stalling it a bit when we put it into the bonsai pot, because that all slows down a lot, which is good in a bonsai, because you don't really want the tree to grow rapidly out of control. You want it to grow a bit slower and stay looking how you've styled it. But initially, to get it to the size that you want, a bonsai pot is not a good place for a tree to be, because it'll just take, you can have a 20-year-old tree that looks like you bought it from Bunnings 2 weeks ago. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole today. We'll save that for another day. So if we decide that is the front of our tree, we then need to work out which way is our tree going to be leaning if we decide to go for a windswept, which is I'm pretty set on doing. We've got this major branch here is already going that way, so we could continue to work with that, maybe. Or we could have the whole thing leaning into the wind a little and then coming back, possibly. Yeah, I think we'll lean it that way. I think we might tip the whole tree over that way a little bit when it goes in the pot. And we might work with the wind coming from this side and just pushing the whole tree over to get that windswept look about it. There's a branch in the middle here that's sort of growing back and tangling up with all these others, so it's only a little one. They might just remove that out of the road. We won't take too much of it just yet until we get some of the styling done. I will fast forward through a lot of this process does take quite a long time, and nobody wants to sit and watch a video of that, I can assure you. So I'll stop if there's anything that I think I need to explain, or any of the decisions that I'm making, I'll stop. But yeah, I think I'll wire up. There's sort of there's two really big branches, a couple of minor ones. We'll wire them up initially, and then we'll bend them into place, and then we might do some finer wiring until we get to where we want to be with the design. There's always a risk too when we're doing this, because we're bending the bejesus out of some of these branches. Like, there's always a chance that you can break them, and especially with melaleucas, it's not the end of the world. Like, if this breaks halfway down, yeah, it sets the design of the tree back, but it will just reshoot, and you let it regrow, and you have another go. You bend it again, and you bend it when it's a bit smaller or whatever. You know, nothing is the end of the world when you're styling your trees. Like, even if you make the biggest screw up, as long as you don't kill the tree, you can always just let it regrow and style it again, change it to a different style. You can do whatever, you know. So don't ever be afraid of styling something wrong and destroying the tree or whatever. So long as you don't kill the tree, which is another reason why you make sure they're healthy before you go mucking around with them. There's really, you can't go wrong, basically. You can always jump back in and restyle the tree. I just heard that branch crack. These guys are pretty forgiving. They will generally keep growing if you do crack them, but it's only once you put them back out on the bench. They'll soon show you if they're going to survive or not. Like I said, it's not the end of the world if you do break something, you know. We'll just let it regrow from wherever it wants to regrow, and we'll do the branch again. As you're working on building that windswept sort of a look to it, there's always going to be some of these branches that are coming out this way that you sort of, you don't want to just bend everything back, or you'll just end up with just one massive foliage. It's not really what we want to do. We want to work on having, I don't know, half a dozen or so branches bending back that will become our main branches, and then we can build off of those to build smaller and smaller branches as we build our design across. We don't want everything going back that way, or we're just going to end up with a hedge, and that's not really what we're after. So any of these that we think we don't want, we can just take them off as we go, tidy that up. Because at the end of the day, if we have every branch going back that way, you're going to end up with just a massive foliage here, and the only bit of the tree you'll see is this trunk, and everything else will be foliage. And you'll be hiding all this work that you do. You want to show off a lot of this intricate work that you do. Like we're twisting and contorting these branches to make it look like they've been living in a harsh environment. So you want to be able to see that, And this will continue as we develop the tree, over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. You know, there'll be more and more of this work will be done to create that windswept look and that tortured, harsh environment look. And we want to be able to see it. We don't want it hidden by all these, you know, just a massive foliage. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at your tree, as you're working on the design. You know, don't be afraid to try and just contort your branches like, you know, they've been living a rough life on the coast somewhere, just getting battered by hellish winds, or, you know, whatever you've got in your mind that you're, you know, trying to make the tree look like it's had an interesting life, like a harsh life. That's a lot of what bonsai is. It's creating a tree that looks like it's got a story, you know, even if it doesn't, even if it's been sitting in a pot pampered for the last 20 years, it looks like it's had a, you know, had a really rough life. So, and you can see that when you look at good bonsai. One thing I think is fairly important is that don't get too carried away with trying to create a perfect bonsai when we're doing an initial styling like this. You're never going to go from a nursery stock tree to a, you know, an awesome looking bonsai in one go. It just doesn't happen. You know, we set the main structure of the tree how we think we want it, and then we let it grow out again, and then we just slowly work on it over time. You can see most of the tree has got this definite windswept thing going on here. The whole tree is being pushed that way, except for these two branches here, and I've left them for a reason. In the future, what I'd like to do, I'll let these grow, and those little branches will get thicker and thicker, and then at some point when I think they're thick enough, I'll cut them right back, I'll strip the bark off them, and they'll be turned into a Deadwood feature, what they call a gin. So that's why they will be left to grow, and we'll just see where the rest of the tree grows. We've got to let all of this now fill in, and then we can come back and we can take the wire off and see where everything's set, and then we reset it again. Some of these little branches we might be able to put a little bit more curve in them, you know, be a bit harder with them next time. Try and make them look really tortured. I think I've gone about as hard as I want to on this one today. I've already broken one branch, or cracked one branch. I'm hoping that branch survives, because that's sort of the main part of the tree. But anyway, right, so that's the styling. I'll go and grab some stuff and clean this up a bit, and then we'll work on getting it put into the pot, and we'll show you that bit. Alright, so now we need to get it into a bonsai pot. Now, sometimes you won't want to reduce the roots and put it into a bonsai pot at the same time as you do major pruning on it. It really depends on the species of tree. These melaleucas I've found to be no issue. You can be pretty harsh with them, and so long as they're in good condition and they're growing actively, you don't seem to have too much of an issue with them. So I'm happy to do both today. But before we go exposing all the roots and getting the root ball down for a bonsai pot, we need to decide what pot we're going to put it in. I don't have a huge amount of bonsai pots to choose from. I guess like most people, when you're starting out, you pick up a few cheap ones here and there. You might see some on Facebook Marketplace and grab a couple, and a few cheapies from Bunnings or whatever. And that's about all I've got. I don't have a huge selection of pots, so finding a pot that perfectly suits a tree is probably not going to happen, but you know, I don't really care. I just want to get it into a nice pot So it looks like a nice tree, and we'll work on it from there. And maybe down the track we can put it into a nicer pot or whatever, but yeah, I've got what I've got. So I don't mind this little blue one. It's probably a little bit small to take this tree straight into it. Like, you're going to have to shrink the root ball by tons to put it in. So I think that might be a little small for that tree. This cream oval is probably a little bit better size wise, but I don't know that I like the colour all that much. I did like this round. This was just a bowl. It wasn't even a bonsai pot. It doesn't have feet or anything. I drilled a couple of holes in the bottom of it for drainage, and I'm sure I'll find a tree for it. I actually don't mind this tree in that pot, but yeah, I'm not 100% convinced it suits the style. This one here I don't mind either. I think the colour tends to suit the tree, and the size is pretty good. I think that would be probably a good choice. Now the first thing we need to do, we've got two big drainage holes in the bottom. We just need to cut a bit of mesh, and we'll stick that over the drainage holes just so we don't lose all our potting medium out the bottom. We just cut these to a little bit larger than the hole. See, they don't need to be much larger than the hole, and we'll just use a little bit of wire to secure those. Doesn't need to be very thick wire. I always keep all my old bits of wire, they come in handy for this sort of thing. I just bend them into a U shape, put them through. Put them through the mesh, through the hole, and then we just bend them out. And that just locates your mesh in the pot. Right, so we've got our pot pretty much ready. I've cut a couple of little lengths of wire here that we're going to feed through the bottom to just so that we can tie the tree in so that it doesn't move around too much. Some of your better pots you'll find actually have holes specifically for that purpose. They have tie down holes in them. Unfortunately these ones don't, but you can just go through the drainage holes anyway, and we make do with what we've got, eh? So we'll just splay them out like that, and then we can just cross them over and tie them up once we've got the tree positioned in the pot, and that'll just help hold it in position so it's not moving around. It just helps it settle in better, and then we can remove them later. It's important to have the pot ready to go, because once we start exposing all the roots, we don't want them sitting out in the open air just drying out for no reason when we could just be having them in the pot and settled in. Yeah, so we get that ready. I've got some potting mix down here. The mix I use at the moment, anyway, is just, it's about half Osmocote Bonsai mix, about a quarter pumice and a quarter zeolite. That's the mix I'm playing with at the moment. It's a very free draining mix. It seems to be what's preferred to try and get those small fine feeder roots in a tree rather than big thick roots. And from all the reading I've done, you promote those small divided feeder roots down below the surface, and that translates to small divided branches above the surface. So that seems to be the current way of thinking. So I'm happy to go with that until I can prove otherwise to myself. So anyway, we'll just try and get rid of a lot of this. I won't totally bare root the tree, but we'll try and get rid of a lot of this potting mix because it is going into a more free draining mix, which we don't really want. There's no point in putting a whole thing in a free draining mix if most of the root ball's sitting in normal potting mix. So, like I said, I don't really want to completely bare root the tree, but and I would expect there to be a lot of roots in close, because when, like I said, when I bought this tree, it was a discounted tree from Bunnings, so generally they've been sitting on the shelf for a fair while, so they're a little bit root bound. So there probably will be a lot of roots in close. But it's good to see a lot of roots have grown out since I potted it up. That's really good to see. Alright, that's a lot of roots. I would say most of that is root growth since I've potted it up. That was probably about the size of the pot that it was in when I bought it. Typical little Bunnings pot. And it's put a lot of root growth on, especially downwards by the look of it. That's alright. So I'll just try and tease a little bit more out. Won't go too crazy with it today, I don't think. Sometimes if you do want to get all of the potting mix out, or most of the potting mix out, you can take them out and hit them with the hose too. That'll wash a lot of it out. We'll probably chop a lot of this lower stuff off and encourage it to grow new roots within the current pot. Thick root there that doesn't have a lot of feeder roots on it. We can probably get rid of that. Righto, so that's pretty close to being able to fit in there nicely. So I'll get a little bit of potting mix and I'll just make a bit of a mound in the middle to settle those roots on. Just mound the soil up in the centre of the pot, and then we'll try, we're going to have it leaning a little. Now we wanted this as the front of our tree. So if we think we've got it down in the pot enough, wiggle it down, wiggle it down. And then we can fill it. With our mix. And then we can do some more adjusting. This is another thing that your chopstick's real handy for. Once you've got your tree sort of where you want it, you can use your chopstick to push your mix down in between in amongst all the roots, because there will be air holes in there, and we sort of want to avoid that if we can. I don't want to tie it in too tight, I just want it so it's held in there nicely. I think looking at that, it needs a little more height. I think this branch, one of these branches at the back here, we'll let them grow up. We might just do another one leaning over a little higher. As I said, these ones will grow out and become a Deadwood feature or a gin. I may use one or both, I'm not sure. I think we could definitely do with a bit more movement in this back one, maybe twist it, but then we'll lose height. So I think for now, although we can, don't want to break it. But like I said, if you break it, just let it grow and go again. Alright, I've got a little bit more movement in that now. We'll let that grow, get a little bit more height, and then we'll curve it over, and then we'll have one final layer leaning over that way, and that'll probably be the finished height of the tree, I guess, somewhere around there. Alright, well that's about all we need to do for our windswept tree. We've got him potted up, we'll go and give him a good water, get some fertiliser on him. Just remember you've cut back a lot of his roots, so his ability to feed himself has been reduced, so feed him up. Anytime you're cutting roots back, cut the foliage back, always give them a feed if it's in the growing season, because they're finding it harder. You've cut all their feeder roots off, they find it harder to absorb the food anyway, so yeah, give him a feed. He'll go into an area where he gets watered twice a day, and he only gets morning sun, and he'll stay there for a couple of weeks until I reckon he's settled in, and you know, maybe even wait to see some new growth on him, and then he can go back out in full sun, where he still gets watered twice a day. But yeah, the place that I've got where he'll go now, it gets misted twice a day, so it's a little bit more of a humid environment, a little bit better for recovery, and keeps him out of that harsh afternoon sun, midday sun. So that's about it for my little windswept melaleuca. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. I think it does need a little bit more styling as we go to really get that tortured windswept look. But that's a matter of refining it as we go. Yeah, and it certainly looks a lot better than you stick in a pot you buy from Bunnings for $50, and it probably cost a lot less too. A couple of bucks for a pot second hand, $5 for the tree, some wire and potting mix in a bit of time. Give it a go and let me know how you go with your windswept tree. Thanks for watching.